Yo guys, what up? Pet Zergling here with a StarCraft 2 FP VOD. It's been a long time since I posted a video, but I have some free time and I'm bored, and I think some noobs need some schooling. So I'm probably going to start throwing these up. I know Dad said something about playing again. I have not been in touch with him. If he plays, that's awesome, but whatever. Hopefully we can bring you guys some good stuff. But I'm not sure what kind of target audience to aim my strategy videos at. If I want like higher level, lower, mid, whatever. But the target of my next couple will be like guys who, now that the Masters League is announced, are trying to get better, trying to get up there, move from like pretty good to very good, I guess. I don't know, depending on where your stance is. Masters League may or may not be considered good, but either way, just give me some feedback if anyone is still subscribed or if anyone is still watching these. So this is a ladder TvT on Delta Quadrant. TvT, I generally like to play a really safe style, just like a safe one base 1-1-1 macro style, and not always, but most of my games, if I'm not like pissed off or anything, I'll just do this. And everyone in TvT does something goofy, something different. Everyone has their own like weird build. So what I do is just kind of like play safe and just try and not die and get an advantage to carry into the mid game, because I feel like even if I don't get an advantage going into the mid and late game in TvT, I think I can win versus most ladder opponents. So if I can get an advantage early on by playing safe, then I'll definitely will do that. So I scout first in the upper right. You generally can scout probably even later than this in TvT, but I decided to scout kind of early just so I can get in the close base to me, the one that's like the most vulnerable from my position, just so I can get in there to make sure he's not like cheesing or whatever. And based on his SCV position, he's probably cross map. And I decided to put down a reactor. Now, if you are not going to rush for any sort of tech, like a really fast siege mode, really fast cloak banshee, medevac, stim drop, I think a reactor is always a good idea on your first barracks before your factory, just because it lets you get a lot of marines out. It lets you spend your money early on while you work on building up gas. So I opt to do that, and I follow it up with a factory like right after my reactor. And once I get like 5 to 7 marines is when I have a decent ground advantage, and I can push out and like take the watchtower and stuff. So what I do is I take my second gas while my reactor's building, just because I spend that 50 gas, my factory's going to be a little late, and I want to have enough gas to put down a starport and start a tank up. So your two options here are, what I like to do is if it's close ground, or like a map like Delta Quadrant or Steppes, I will go tank right away, right when that factory finishes. I'll tech lab and get a tank out. And if it's like close air, or I don't really think I need the tank, I will just build the tech lab and then lift it and put the tech lab on the starport so I can get a really quick Raven out. But I opt for the tank on this map just to play it safe. So yeah, really super standard up until here. And I get like 7 marines, and I decide to push out to the watchtower, I think. Yeah, because he didn't, like, what he was doing didn't look very suspicious. Now, you don't really need siege. I'm just going to hold and play a defensive position with my tanks. And tanks without siege are pretty dang good in small scrimmages anyway. You really don't need siege that bad until the numbers start getting, like, past, like, 80 supply. So I'd rather invest that money getting a starport out with a Raven. So generally, I use my second 50 energy on my orbital on a mule, and then my third 50 energy will be a scan on his base. That's like the accepted like standard TvT scan timing, I guess. So I opt for a Viking right away when my starport comes out, and so I use this scan, and I see he's got no reactor, he's got a heli or a no tech lab, excuse me, and a starport with a tech lab. So it's almost 100 billion% cloak banshee, because otherwise he would have the tech lab getting tanks unless he was saving his gas for something. And he sees my base, and he really doesn't get any information from me, because even he may assume that I'm going cloak banshee, but I'm not. I'm going Raven. So Not really too sure. I think so. What I decided to do here is, and you'll probably do this against like 90% of what their build is once you learn what they're going to do and how to counter it, you can just put a CC up and expand and then take your advantage. So I get my Viking out, and he's not going to have Cloak quite yet, so I have time to get the Raven out. What does suck is that the Raven doesn't build up a ton of energy. And I see right here with my Marine on the Watchtower that he sends Hellions and Banshees, and this ends up being like some sort of goofy push. Now, it's basically designed to kill you if you're trying to like skip tanks for whatever reason, but that's, you know, I don't do that. Like, I have tanks, I have 2 tanks out here and a Viking, so this push does like very, very little damage, and you just want to make sure that you don't lose any of your key units. Marines are the fodder here, and I actually get his Banshee, and he pulls some SCVs, and he loses them, which is really, really good for me. So I just pulled my tanks back, and I ended up like repairing them after this battle. So I came out way, way ahead there because of what he did. Because he was making Hellions, he does not have a CC building as fast as mine. So not only do I have the military advantage with my tanks, my Vikings, my Raven, but I'm also ahead economically now. So I just decided to do a really, really standard transition. A benefit of having that reactor on your barracks so early is that you can jump your starport right on there and start right away if you want to get out a lot of Vikings. Now he's going Banshees, so I'm not too worried about having like a lot of Vikings. It may seem counterintuitive, but you really only need a ton of Vikings if he's making a ton of Vikings. So to keep air dominance, but when he's going Banshees, you really only need 1 or 2, you know, maybe 3 Vikings for air dominance. So I invest most of my other stuff just getting my Expo up and running, making sure I keep tank production. I think I get Stim here pretty soon. And right after you get your core starport with reactor, barracks with tech labs, factory with tech lab, you want to start adding some more barracks just to sink your money, basically. You really don't. You can, I guess, make a second factory off 2 bases. I usually don't do it. I usually just decide to get upgrades with my extra money, or gas rather, because you do have a lot of resources. So my standard off 2 base is going to be 3 racks, 1 fac, 1 port, and it's kind of conservative, but I think your positioning and your decision making is a lot more important than your macro in mid-game TvT. So I send my 2 Vikings and my Raven out to see what he's doing, to see where his Expo is, and at this point his Expo isn't even landed, which is really, really good for me. It just confirms the fact that he is not ahead, and I scanned just to see, and his CC still isn't even done. But he is pushing me with a pretty large army. Now what I'm worried about here is that my Vikings are kind of out of position. I'm not sure if he saw me leave with them, but I'm not going to be able to protect my tanks. This isn't really like a good attack for him. He's never going to be able to like kill me here, but I do like kind of take some damage with my tank. But he like randomly attacks those Marines, so I don't actually lose anything, and I'm able to chase the Banshee away without losing anything. And here he kind of makes another mistake. He throws a PDD down. Raven energy is really, really, really valuable. If you have a 200 energy Raven and you can drop 2 PDDs in a fight, it's basically game changing. And he didn't even have full energy to waste that PDD, so that was definitely a mistake. And because I saw him waste that PDD, I'm going to keep cranking out Marauders because of the increased efficiency. And now I decided that, well, I've had the advantage economically, I've had the military advantage, I'm going to set up an attack. I'm not going to take a 3rd base. On a map like this, taking a 3rd base is kind of like, I don't know, it just kind of sucks. Like, you can take it eventually, but if you have the advantage off of 2 base versus 2 base, you should generally just try and kill them, especially when they don't have a lot of tanks. So I decided to do that. I see that kind of like goofy scan go off, so I think he's going to like run Cloak Banshees around, but I never end up seeing them. So I start +1 weapons. It's really a good idea to have an armory, have an eBay, and start +1/+1 early, just so that if it ends up getting into the late game, you can get your 3/3 upgrades like faster. You don't have to worry about getting like the newbie ones. Just, you know, and it makes a pretty big difference. Like a 3/3 maxed army versus like a 2/1 maxed army is actually like a significant difference. So I throw up 2 turrets just for mobile detection. A lot of times what guys will do if they can't take your army is they'll like do some like goofy run around with Banshees and they'll try and stall you. So I just kind of want to like make a clean ending to the game here. I had 2 medevacs just because I saw he keeps making Banshees, so I'm not even going to have to worry about air control. Like my 4 Vikings that I have here are good. And he makes a mistake here. He runs like Banshees, he loses a Banshee there, he lose the Hellion, and then he stims into my army. He throws one PDD down, and then I also throw mine down. I could have thrown mine was really, really late there. That was a mistake on my part, and I also lost my Raven. That wasn't the best fight, but I kind of was like really, really confident that I was going to win that, so I wasn't paying too close attention. I was just trying to make sure I didn't like fuck anything up, like run or like right click past his army or something. So you always want to lead with your air units, especially when you have air control, so that you don't walk into tank fire. Now I see he has basically nothing, so I just move up his ramp. I'm not really sure why he was building a Thor. Thors are pretty bad TvT unless you get like really, really late game, and he has nothing. This is basically the end of the game. So I just pick off his last Thors with Marauders and clean it up. And he quits out, and I think we get like a fatty plus 46 for that one. I just started playing on my main turn account. So yeah, that was my first game. Like I said, if you guys